Iraq's President Saddam Hussein. Washington is apparently also concerned that any enclave for Kurds would lead to the partition of Iraq. And other countries with large minorities are worried about the precedent that such a move would set. Meanwhile, Kurds in London have stepped up their calls for more aid and security for the refugees fleeing northern Iraq.
Down with Saddam! Down with Saddam!
Words of anger from Kurdish exiles were directed at a new target, the London offices of the Arab League. The demonstrators charged the League's silence on the Kurdish issue showed support for Saddam Hussein. But the words were a phrase for a proposal by British Prime Minister John Major for a Kurdish enclave in Iraq to be protected through the United Nations.
We like this to be used as a start and to be expanded to include all Kurdish area to be protected by United Nations forces.
It is not clear whether such a plan would include the largest Kurdish cities or just create a buffer zone at the borders.
We're not supporting the concept of Kurdistan. What we are supporting is the concept of safety for the Kurdish people.
Iraq rejects a plan which would provide an escape from the misery of the mountaintops that the Kurds are now subjected to. As bad as the conditions are, they have chosen this route rather than stay in the Iraqi towns taken over by the forces of Saddam Hussein. This is the Kurdish Cultural Center in London, where pictures of previous struggles hang on the walls. The phones are ringing constantly for a disaster relief fund which is growing rapidly. But Western governments are acting. British military aircraft are continuing their delivery of rations, blankets, and sleeping bags to Turkey to join U.S. and French airdrops to the refugees.
A senior United Nations official says that nearly 300,000 Kurds stranded on the Turkish border are at serious risk of dying from cold and exhaustion. Turkish officials reported that 17 more refugees died in the past 24 hours, including 2 women who were crushed by aid packages dropped by Western planes. Hundreds of thousands more Kurds have reached Iran and more are on their way.
These are the lucky ones, Iraqi refugees who have made it to the relative safety of a temporary camp, 12 miles inside the Iranian border. Many here can sleep in tents provided by the Red Crescent. And there are at least a few ambulances to evacuate the most critically injured. But they are often caught in the traffic jams that send tempers flaring. And supply trucks must move slowly along the narrow mountain roads. Only a few have arrived so far. The feeling of desperation in the camp is steadily growing.
Little water, little, and food, little, and sleep, little.
They fight each other now for scarce supplies of bread. Some risk being beaten to carry a few pieces away and refuse to give up even a little of what they have gained. Hundreds of people gathered around this truck, trying to grab articles of clothing donated by local villagers. They struggled to hold on to anything they managed to catch. Fights broke out, and when some of the refugees tried to climb onto the truck, soldiers threatened to shoot them and beat them back with the butts of their rifles. Desperation is turning to despair.
Thousands are waiting for their death. Thousands are facing death, especially the children.
The unlucky ones are still far up the mountain, trying to reach the crowded camp. Almost no relief has gotten to these people. Many say they have eaten nothing for days. They find firewood wherever they can and huddle together around fires at night to keep out the cold. They say they will keep walking as far as they can and hope they can find help along the way.
We'll be back after the commercial break with the latest bomb attacks in Manila. And more scuffles in Taiwan's parliament.